By now, everyone knows I go live early. But hi, everyone. I'm Kimbyrleigha, and this is Kimbyrleigha Live, where I discuss current and ongoing true crime cases. And I help you to break down the legal aspects in an easy to understand manner while I'm brushing up on what, if you've been here before, my law exam, my bar exam. I'm preparing myself for the bar. I'm taking it in 2026. And it helps me to break down these trials, to talk to you about cases, to deep dive into the law. I'm going to be taking it here in California. But if you are new here, hi, it's nice to finally meet you. I do have a main true crime channel here on YouTube with close to 500,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I never thought we would get there, but it's overwhelming and very cool. I think we're like 4,000 away, so tell your friends. And I also have a true crime podcast here with my husband called Dark Livity, and both of those channels discuss solved cases in a narrative manner. We tell a story. So if you like that kind of thing, consider checking them out. And also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel because this one's different. And give me a like because that really helps with the algorithm. And this channel's new, so I need all the help I can get. But here, I'm going to be talking about things that are currently unfolding. So a little bit different. And if you want to know more about me, why you should listen to me, follow me, you can look at my background and my education because that is how I see the world. We all have that baggage, so to speak, but it could be good baggage, right? So that's the lens in which I look at everything. Now, you did ask about merch and you asked about super chats, and I do appreciate you wanting to support me. We've been making merch for a while. This is one of the new merch pieces before we get into like the actual case. And I told John, I was like, I think we need to like fill in the dark livity with white. I love it though. I love the design. I just think like I want to see the dark livity a little bit better. But that's that. And that link is below as well. And I think I'm going to open up the super chats. I just wanted to get a little bit more practice because I do have a membership on my main channel and that's a little bit different. Those are like they're convenient, casual chats just to get to know me. But I know y'all want the loyalty badges here so that you can start that. I was first and I get that. I love that I do it on other people's channels. So I'll check it out. But I do want to get into the case for today, which is day 20 of Karen Reed's retrial. But I also thought I should probably point something out. Everyone is welcome here. Everyone is welcome here. I do not care whether you think Karen is the biggest piece of and you hate her and you're like, she should go straight to jail. That's okay. You are welcome here. Or if you're on the other side, you're like, you know what? I don't believe she did it. I believe it was something in the house, or I don't know what happened to John O'Keefe or whatever. You are welcome here. I want us to be the jury. I don't know if you've ever been on a jury. They don't agree. They're from all walks of life. They have different perspectives, and it's our job to analyze and think critically. But I did get a couple comments recently that I could tell, were just like, "Hey, she hit him with a car." And I'm like, well, you can't really say that though, because it hasn't been proven. I mean, I'm only taking what's in the four walls of this courtroom right now. Although, I am going to discuss things from the first trial. It's just hard not to. But you are welcome here. I want to be challenged. I don't like yes, ma'am, yes, mans. Okay. I like to be challenged. I like to think of things. Courtney and I talked all day. I'm glad you're here, Courtney. Straight to jail. She said, straight to jail, Karen. But we have different perspectives and we go back and fork. Um, and we have different opinions every day because we're listening to the evidence. But I do think it's interesting that a lot of the lawyers I follow, it's not a coincidence that they do not see a reason right now that Karen should be going behind bars. Do you understand what I mean? Because they're following the law. It's not a coincidence. So if you do find people and you're like, y'all are all the same, I think I would tell you, well, I believe those people are following the law. And if they are attorneys, I think, we take an oath and all that stuff. Not that it matters, but I really do believe they are following the law and they're looking at it because I'm watching them and I'm listening. And there are some I don't follow because I can tell that they are just straight one sided and that's it. But I think you might have heard that last time court happened, the jurors needed to be spoken to one by one. So the judge had to pull them aside, and everyone was concerned. They're like, oh my gosh, is this going to be a mistrial? What's going on? This happens. It happens. They most likely heard something. It could have been said by another juror. It could have been said, outside of the courtroom. They're at lunch. Somebody says something. I don't think it was anything crazy or out of the ordinary, but the judge is going to say, did it impact you in any way? Are you still impartial? That's important. And also, she had to kind of tell them, let's be serious. Let me read you the instructions again. It's imperative not to talk about this case until you are deliberating. But I do want to play that part for you because, it just gives us a little insight on what happened in the beginning. So let's play that and then we will get into the rest. And by the way, I was in the shower listening back to this TMI. I was in the shower listening back to this last night and because I read a comment that said, I can't even hear you. You are right. I was low. The volume of the court was high. I tried to balance it out. So let's try it.
Good morning, jurors. So an issue has come to my attention that is going to make it necessary that I talk to each one of you individually over at sidebar with counsel. So that process will take a little while. So I'm going to don't speculate as to what I'm going to talk to you about. Please, when you go back to the deliberation room, talk about anything but this case, and I'll see each of you individually. And the process may take. The cameras will be shut off, and I'm going to talk to the lawyers about whether no filming. All right, send you back and we'll come back.
Okay, she was talking low. So let's just ignore what I said because it was the witnesses that are talking really, really loud. And then it was me talking low. But as you could probably see from the closed captioning, because I'm also trying to put that on the screen, she sent them out. She had a conversation with them. They came back, and there was some rumors that some of the jurors switched seats. That was debunked. So whatever news channel was saying that happened, it was incorrect. Nothing happened to any of the jurors. When they came back, everything proceeded as usual. And I'm sure you probably heard that the court went out of order. So that meant that there was another witness that they needed to have before. So kind of out of the order in which the Commonwealth was going to present their case. But that is because they had a legit brain surgeon come in. And you're going to find out he probably had a personal conflict. He's a neurosurgeon, after all, a busy one, operating on patients between making cappuccinos for his wife, waking up at 4 a.m., bless your soul, and helping with cancer using a gamma knife surgery. He is a superhero status, right? My favorite witness to date, because I like the medical stuff, very interested, worked in the medical field for a decade before going to law school. So I'm going to start with Dr. Aizik Wolf, and then we will go back and go through the other forensic witness for that day that's in my thumbnail. So he is from my home state of Florida, Miami to be exact. And just a little background on him because Dr. Aizik Wolf, he's going to talk about his extensive experience in brain trauma, in surgery. He's the director of the Miami Neuroscience Center. And he's also, I think he's in like 35 plus medical associations, American Association of Neurological Surgeons. He's conducted brain surgery research. He focuses on brain swelling, which is important, brain flow and oxygen. And he is the author of over 16 book chapters and over 70 journal articles. Okay. So many of these focus on head trauma, skull fractures, brain hemorrhages, all topics that are going to be very important when we're talking about John O'Keefe and what happened to him. And of course, I think this is Lally. Was this Lally or was it Brennan? I can't remember. But they didn't hesitate to talk all about Dr. Wolf's experience in this testimony. That's important to note, right? Because our last witness, a little bit different, right? But Dr. Wolf is not your typical expert witness. He's a doctor that's taking time out of his busy schedule to do something that he only does like 1% of his career, which is come to court and testify. So that's different from somebody like Shannon Burgess, who is an expert witness by trade. Majority of his time he's giving an opinion on data. But Dr. Wolf is a better witness for the Commonwealth because it's almost like he is more neutral. And as you listen to his testimony, if you haven't done so already, sometimes it's good to come back here and have a refresher because I listened to it multiple times and it's nice having a recap because we learn new things. But I don't think he spent too much time on the theories of this case. And I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. Of course, he's well versed on injuries and whatnot. But I think he might not have known exactly what the Commonwealth was arguing. But he's quite the character. And you will see why. But let him introduce himself. I've been going on way too long. Here we go. Dr. Wolf, as in the real thing.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Could you please
Oh.
introduce yourself to the jury,
Hold on a
spell your
second.
first name and last name for the court reporter?
Sorry about
My
that.
first name is Aizik, A-I-Z-I-K. It's phonetic. Last name is Wolf, W-O-L-F, like the real thing.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a brain
Like the real thing. That was really cute. Okay.
surgeon.
Is there a special part of medicine that you study?
Well, my main interest in brain surgery is brain tumors and trigeminal neuralgia. But I also specialize in movement disorders. I do pediatrics and adults.
Are you an active working neurosurgeon?
I am a very active working neurosurgeon. I get up every day at 4:30 in the morning to go to work, 5 days a week. I take call 300 days out of 365 days a year.
Did you work yesterday?
Yes, I did.
What type of work did you do yesterday?
I did 2 brain surgeries.
Don't be mad at me, but I thought hungry like a wolf. That's a song, right? I think that's a lyric. That's what I thought of.
Yesterday.
Are you working tomorrow?
I have 4 surgeries scheduled for tomorrow, which is why this is a little bit delayed for me, and I have 4 on Friday.
And what type of surgeries do you have tomorrow and Friday?
I have 3 brain tumors, 1 trigeminal neuralgia, and on Friday I have 4 patients with movement disorders.
You're here today as a witness. How much of your practice, how much percent of your income is from being a consultant or a witness for a case?
Probably less than 1%. I don't do this for a living.
I want you to take us through some of your education and background. Could you share with us where you went to medical school?
Okay. I'm not trying to cut him off. It's very important that he has an extensive background, but just trust me when I tell you he has an extensive background. And Brennan goes into all the publications. I think it's Brennan. Some he can't even pronounce, and neither could I. So no hate. You guys know I mispronounce things all the time. But I did want to go to some of important things that he does. It's all important.
Have you been part of publications of a number of different books?
Yes.
I won't list parts of all 16 books, but can I point out a few?
Sure.
Were you the author of a book chapter regarding head injury, difficult medical management?
Yes.
Were you the author of a book chapter on pediatric neurosurgical emergencies?
Yes.
He's like, what?
Were you the author of a book chapter on complications of head injuries in adults?
Yes.
Were you an author of a book chapter, Imaging of Craniocerebral Trauma?
Yes.
Were you an author of a book chapter in emergency room assessment of the head injury patient?
Yes.
Were you the author of a book chapter, Intracranial Injuries?
Yes.
That's not me. YouTube is being weird with the whole skipping thing.
I won't list or ask you about the other book chapters that you've been the author of. Have you been involved in journal articles?
Yes.
I'd like to ask you just about a few of the 70 journal articles that you have published.
Your Honor, objection.
So do it.
Objection.
Go ahead and ask the question and comments first.
Were you an author of a journal article, Intracranial Pressure in Non-Traumatic Ischemia and Hypothermic Cerebral Insults?
Yes.
Were you the author of a journal article, Post-Traumatic Cerebral Infarction?
Yes.
He almost left.
Were you the author of
It's like
the journal Fractures?
infarction, I think.
Causes?
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about that paper?
We used thin cut CT scans.
I don't want to confuse you with all this because we have to use our brains. I'm not saying we can't, but like, yes, yes, yes. Journal articles, 70. I don't want to go over all of them. Neither did they. But he did point out ones that correlate to John's injuries or supposed injuries, right? And Dr. Wolf reviewed autopsy photographs, the chief medical examiner's report, forensic pathology reports regarding John O'Keefe. So let's see what he had to say about that, because I think that's more important in the grand scheme of what we're trying to figure out. It was Brennan. Also, I have it on 1.25. No, I had it on 1.5. Hold on. I don't want to go too fast, but I don't know why it's doing that.
Over your career and your study and your clinical experience, have you treated different types of brain injuries?
Yes.
Are you familiar with a number of different types of brain injuries?
Yes, we still treat them.
Were you asked to review materials relative to this case?
Yes.
And do you recall the materials that you reviewed?
Yes.
Could you share with us some of the materials that you reviewed?
I reviewed the chief medical examiner's assessment of the case. I reviewed pictures that I'm assuming the medical examiner took of the autopsy, and I reviewed the report from the forensic pathologist.
And before I ask you about your review of specific materials and your opinions in this case, is there a benefit to your clinical experience in studying brain injuries as opposed to the experience you had as a fellow simply with pathology?
Well, I think that for the jury to understand, as a clinician understands the process from the time the injury occurs till the patient either leaves the hospital or dies.
So you heard what he said. Either the patient leaves the hospital or they die. So he has a tremendous amount of experience with brain injuries. He's clearly qualified. He's now going to explain his analysis of John's head injury. So that is what I wanted to get to, but I did want to just highlight he is very experienced, respectable, got a lot of education and experience under his belt working in trauma hospitals. Hold on.
The orbital
I don't know why it's skipping, so I just wanted to like play it real quick. But let's listen to what he saw. Wait. Actually, I'm looking and I'm like, is this what I wanted to play? Sometimes I'm like, wait a minute. Let me check the next one. It's this one.
Did you have an opportunity to review photographs of a laceration to Mr. John O'Keefe's head?
Yes, I did.
With the court's permission, I'm going to ask to display Exhibit 160.
Okay.
This is going to be important.
Dr. Wolf, I'm going to ask you to take a look at this photograph. Have you seen this photograph before?
Yes.
I want you to explain to us what you're seeing here and take us through the process of your observations.
Well, what we're seeing is an approximate 1.5 inch laceration with bridging tissue and contusions and abrasions. To us, that's just a classic blunt trauma injury. There's nothing other than just vanilla about it. This is what happens when soft tissue hits a solid ground. The skin tears apart a bit, but not through and through. As you can see, there's the bridging. You can see all the bruising or contusions and just the tear, a little bit serrated along the edges.
So Dr. Wolf did identify that 1.5-inch laceration on the back of John O'Keefe's head. We talked about this in another video, and I didn't show you, but I do have the autopsy photographs. So it does have, there's a cut in the middle. So 1.5-inch laceration, back of the head. And when he says bridging tissue, there's like a border around the actual laceration. So kind of like it goes up a little bit on both sides. And there's abrasions back there as well on top of the cut. There's an abrasion, like it looks like he like scraped against the floor, if that's how you want to understand it. But Dr. Wolf described it as a classic blunt trauma injury. The skin tears and it's consistent with a fall onto hard ground. And now he goes into the skull and what he observed there. And then we're going to talk about it because I think that's really important. Because now we know what the outside looks like. And then we're going to talk about what the inside looks like. And I don't know why. And YouTube was doing this to me yesterday. It's almost like it needs to be refreshed or something. Let me just refresh it and see. I'm so sorry that I had to do it like that. I won't do that again. It's being weird and I don't know why.
Of that wound, did you have a chance to further look at information provided to you about the actual inside the skull of Mr. John O'Keefe?
Yes, it was the pictures that I was reviewing showed a non-depressed skull fracture extending linearly through the clivus and into the frontal fossa of Mr. O'Keefe over the orbital roofs. He had fractures along the temporal fossa as well. So it was a classic linear basilar skull fracture.
Is basal skull fracture a
It's
characterization?
basically the base of your skull is what it encompasses. So the opening At the very bottom is what we call the foramen magnum that connects your brainstem to your spinal cord. And then as your brainstem goes up, it goes into the different skull areas that, talk about what we call the cerebral cortexes, your occipital lobe, your temporal lobes over here, and then your frontal lobes.
I know this is a lot because medical stuff can be kind of overwhelming, but according to Dr. Wolf, the skull fracture was non depressed, which is important. When you have a depressed skull fracture, you can imagine this being something like an egg. When you take an egg and you crack it on the side of a bowl, what's going to happen? There's a depression where you can see where it hit. Might be a bad example, but what I'm trying to say is something that hits something or is hit with something. If you're not hit with a baseball bat, you might not have a depressed section of your head. What this reminds me of, I thought of this when I was looking at the photo. Remember when we were kids, and I don't know if you did this, but when you used to wrap up a straw, like you wrap up a straw, wish I had one, and then you hold it and your friend flicks the middle of it. Okay. And then it makes a crack right in the middle and it pops. Sounds terrible. That is the kind of injury it looks like. It's like it hit something. So I hope that's a good example without showing you. I don't mind showing you, but I feel like it's disrespectful and then it will be up there. And I know in the last trial they let these be seen because I have them from the last trial. But what's important to note is that this is the back of his head and it's a common type of fracture that you would get when your head strikes the ground. The force is then transferred through the base of your skull. And that's actually the part of your brain, or sorry, the brainstem and that base of your skull is very important because that is what is usually damaged to the point where you die. Okay. So he'll explain that a little bit later. But he is going to talk about how this could happen. And interestingly, I mentioned this in one of these lives. You'll probably remember I mentioned coup and counter coup injury. And that's what I thought the black eyes came from. I said, and I showed you a picture of raccoon eyes. Remember that? I said the raccoon look is not from an injury or a punch to the face all the time. Remember that? Tell me if you remember that because I thought that was important.
So can you walk us through what happens when someone incurs this type of injury to the back of the head, how it happens, and what are the next steps for a person?
So what happens is, you fall backwards, and the linear acceleration starts to take you back down with gravity. The skull hits the ground. It gets, in layman's terms, smashed a little bit. And then the brain moves forward as a response to that. And it moves forward because you have cerebral spinal fluid and because you have the deceleration, acceleration again. As it does, your skull, if you were to look inside your skull, it's like mini mountains along your temporal bones and your frontal bones. So the brain is being thrust forward at a fairly good speed, and it's getting bruised. You can think of it as if you took a hammer to your thumb. It's really turning black and blue. Those are the contusions. And so the temporal poles and the frontal poles are getting contusions because of that.
So you just explained the physics of how John O'Keefe's injuries likely happened. The skull hits the ground first, and that's what they call the coup injury. And it's a French word. I'm not French, but I know that it means blow. And the damage from the brain hitting the skull on impact. Okay, so your brain is soft. It's going to bounce around in there. I'm sure you've seen it in car accidents when someone like goes forward and their brain, you don't even have an injury here. And sometimes your brain is injured on the inside and it starts to swell. That's because it's soft and it's hitting a very hard object, which is your own skull. But when someone falls on the back of their head, your brain's going to hit the back. It's going to get bruised there. And then it's going to bounce and you're going to get the frontal lobe, which is the counter coup, which is the counter side of your head, the counter injury. And that's all inside. And then it's going to have bruising. And that's something you can see on CT scans and also see during his autopsy, which he notes he saw in John's case. And that's important. In his medical opinion, and from what we can tell, the back of the head hit is what happened first, which is evident from the actual laceration that's on the back of John's head that has the ridges on the sides. I hope that explains it. the little straw example, if I had one, you'll have just that cut in the straw, but it's from hitting it really hard. So, and then we have to think about what makes sense, right? How does this happen? Is there any other way? We're going to get to that. But this is also where the brain bleed came from. Those little hemorrhages that happen, they're serious, but he said not enough to require surgery. And these are common. They're common in these kind of head injuries because the blood vessels that are in the brain, under the surface of the brain, are being impacted. They're breaking open from the trauma. But now he's going to talk about what the possibilities are. And I'm going to be clear here. It's from hitting the ground, but what's important is that we stay with this and we understand that there are possibilities on how the fall or whatever it was happened, right? And that's what I was so excited to hear, all the different possibilities. So let's go to the next one.
Laceration on the back of his head was caused by a fall. Could this be caused by a fall landing on hard ground?
Yes, I mean, like I said, it's a classic blunt trauma laceration.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty whether this injury, the laceration and the basal fracture, was caused by Mr. O'Keefe falling backwards on the ground?
My opinion is that that's what caused his whole injury.
So Kel asked, and that's why I left it up on the screen, did he fall or did he have other injuries that match getting hit by a car? So far, there have not been other injuries mentioned yet, even from the medical examiner who did his autopsy, that correlate with getting hit by a vehicle. So that's why this is so complicated. And that's why I wanted to play all this because, yes, he fell back, right? And that's how this doctor just said, that's how this whole thing happened. He fell. So to answer Cal and to answer everybody, that's what caused this whole injury, him falling. But to be fair to both sides, because I don't want to sit here and not analyze what this could mean for both the Commonwealth and the defense. We still don't know how John ended up falling backwards. Was it a push? Was it from a car? Was it from someone punching him? Was it a slip? Because we're going to get to that as well, which was very interesting. So let's just keep going. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's keep going.
The pattern of the laceration, do you have an opinion whether that is consistent with hitting the cold, hard ground?
Objection, Your Honor. Can we have sidebar on that, please?
So I'm sustaining the objection, so no sidebar.
Your Honor.
They're really trying to object to that. But, it's not necessarily in evidence anything about a cold ground. I mean, obviously, we know it was snowing, but he's saying cold, hard ground. And that hasn't actually been established. So I think the judge is just going to let it slide because it is a possibility. But keep in mind, he preserved that objection on the record. I don't think it's going to matter, though, because there's so many different theories about what happened. But the ground, yes, it could have been the ground.
Do you have an opinion, doctor, about whether that laceration on the back of his head was caused by a particular movement?
Well, the only way he could get this kind of an injury was to fall backwards, hit the back of his head, and then the resulting, energy forces going into his brain and to his base of his skull.
Would that type of laceration require Mr. O'Keefe to have hit a line type or ridge type object?
A ridge type of object?
Yes.
No, I mean, like I said, the tearing of the skin in that fashion, you could look it up, would be just a classic blunt trauma injury.
Is there anything about that injury that would suggest to you it had to have been something sharp or ridge-like to cause?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, request kindly a sidebar on this.
All right.
You can tell they want a sidebar. And in case you're wondering why, well, there is a theory that John O'Keefe was pushed or punched and it resulted in him falling backward and hitting a set of stairs or hitting a weight bench inside the basement of the Alberts house at 34 Fairview. So what Brendan's trying to do is say, oh, does this need to be a ridge? Does it need to be sharp? Which would be those items, right? So they asked for a sidebar, which makes sense. because that fact is not in evidence. It's not like they brought in a weight bench. So it's kind of irrelevant at this point, but I don't think they want them to go there right now, right? And they haven't established that any kind of weapon is related to this case or involved in this case, but we'll see. This is going to be a long sidebar, so I'm going to go to the next clip that I got.
So as we were discussing, Dr. Wolf, you said this is a classic fall backwards. Is there anything about the pattern of that laceration that would suggest that
I don't know why YouTube's doing that skipping thing.
there was a ridge or a line type edge that caused that wound?
Not necessarily.
And have you seen, in your experience, similar types of lacerations and breaks caused by falling on hard ground?
Yes, you can see that both in the occipital region. You can see it if patients fall on the, forehead. The skin tears, they're still bridging, and then they get bruises.
Some of your work was in Minnesota.
Correct.
Was it a colder part of Minnesota?
Very cold part of Minnesota. It's Minneapolis.
I'm sorry. Did you often see these type of injuries there?
Yes, I mean, we took care of a trauma center, Hennepin County. Very frequently, patients that are drunk fall down on ice, sidewalks.
Okay. This is when I said I don't think he understands or knows anything about the theories, because he just said that a person could be drunk and they could slip and fall on icy sidewalks, and they could develop lacerations and blood clots in the skull and fractures. And it happened when he's going to tell you.
And could develop, lacerations in their head, epidurals, which are blood clots above the dura because they fracture a bone in the temporal area and they can get a bleed from a fractured artery. And it happens when people are shoveling snow and have a heart attack and fall backwards. So there are various ways that people fall, resulting in head injuries and lacerations to their forehead or to different areas of their head.
That's important, right? There's various ways people can get this type of injury. And he explained why, and that's what I was saying. But I also don't think he was well versed on the theory, because I don't think the Commonwealth wanted him to say, oh, well, someone could just be drunk and slip and fall and they could fall back and get this kind of injury. Because we know that John O'Keefe was drinking. He'd been drinking within 30 minutes of leaving the waterfall bar. Around 12 o'clock a.m., he was drinking a beer. It's on CCTV footage. Courtney and I looked at it this morning. So he'd been drinking since earlier in the night. And remember his blood alcohol level? We talked about it in another video. I mentioned he would be stumbling. He would be clearly intoxicated at this point. So if someone could simply be shoveling snow, albeit this doctor said during a heart attack, or if someone could be drunk and lose their footing and fall and have the same kind of injury, that to me is very important, because it really does bring reasonable doubt whether people like it or not. But at the same time, we still have the possibility that he fell because maybe he got hit by a car, right? We don't know yet. We haven't heard the defense's case. We haven't even gotten to accident reconstruction. But this next part's interesting. Would John have died immediately from this injury? That's what the Commonwealth wants to know next.
I want you to take us back now to after the fall. Would Mr. O'Keefe, in your study and opinion, have died immediately?
No.
Can you share? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'll tell you. There is very few things that head injury where you would die, quote, immediately. So if I took a knife and stabbed you in the back of your neck right below your skull, and
I didn't want to play that for YouTube because they can decide to take the stream down. Okay, he's going to explain some very graphic things that can happen to you that could kill you immediately, which we don't need to get into. I'm sure you can just use your imagination. But blunt force head trauma rarely will result in instantaneous death. It usually occurs over time because your brain starts to swell. That's why, if you've ever seen, like in pediatric injuries, I'm a mom, so I think of that right away. Immediately, they're going to want to check and get the pressure down in a child's head, because their brain swelling is what causes them to pass away if they do fall in that manner, right? Same thing here. Eventually, the blood flow, the oxygen flow, that stops. And he explained that even serious trauma patients can survive for hours, even days. He said weeks, finally succumbing to their injuries. But those patients are seen. They're not lying on the ground alone in the middle of the night, right? I think this could be good for the prosecution that John didn't necessarily die immediately. But does that mean there's a possibility of him using his phone? I'm not a doctor, but I personally do not think so from what I know about the injuries. I am studying death investigation, but I even tried taking a class today. I kid you not, I tried taking pedestrian and automotive injuries, and the class wasn't open. So I was like, darn it, because I wanted some extra education on that. But this injury was severe enough to be deadly, but not something that would have caused him to die right away. He's not going to be able to look at a device, unlock it, look at a text message, lock his phone again. Because remember, the trigger event, the impact of the so called collision or tech stream event that all these experts have been talking about, right now, the timeline is correlating with happening before John uses Face ID and locks his phone. But could it be reasonable doubt? Sure. I don't know which way the jurors are seeing it, but now I wanted to go to the raccoon eyes, remember? That's really important. I hope you're getting something out of this. I am, because I love going over it again.
The medical examiner took pictures of his periorbital area and diagnosed Raccoon's eyes. So Raccoon's eyes occur because there's leakage through the orbital fractures into the periorbital space. Normally, it takes about 24 to 48 hours to develop. It has been noted as early as 1 to 3 hours, which would make it not immediate.
Could we
Yeah.
please have Exhibit 14?
So Phoenix Rising Tarot said so he would have been laying in the snow with a brain bleed. Essentially, unfortunately, sadly, yes. That seems to be what has happened. I mean, according to this doctor, anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to pause it. Him drinking water is making me want to drink water.
Dr. Wolf, could you share with us what you see here in this picture?
So right here, you can see the black and blue that sort of configures, if he had his eyes open, like what we describe as Raccoon's eyes, right? And that's not caused by direct trauma to his eyelids.
Remember, I showed you that website and I said, go to this website. It's really great. You can see all these injuries. You can understand head injuries better. I don't have it up on the screen now, but we looked at a picture of raccoon eyes. And I told you it's not usually caused from a punch. We're going to get to another injury on John's face. But for this one, that's not what's happening here. He has puffy black eyes on both sides.
It's caused by what I described as the basilar skull fracture, which went to the anterior fossa, which is right over the orbit here, inside with leakage of blood products into that periorbital area.
You mentioned that.
So I think we got that part right. And it also takes a little while for this to occur.
Starts or takes at least 1 to 3 hours to begin?
Minimally, yes.
You take that down, please.
1 to 3 hours minimum. But normally it takes 24 to 48 hours. So I thought that was interesting. And this just happens when the blood leaks from the soft tissue in that skull fracture and the pressure causes those eyes to raccoon, right? It's pooling there. And in those autopsy photos, I could tell, like, wow, this is a lot. He did conclude that he would be alive for some time after the fall, possibly several hours. Why? Because if you are not actively living, if your body is still not doing the processes, right, you're not going to develop that in your eyes. It has to swell. So your body still has to be making blood. Your heart's going to be pumping. So sadly, this could go to John not getting immediate care, no matter what happened to him. If it was Karen, she didn't get care, but did she know about it? I don't know if it was true that she hit him. Did she do it on purpose? I personally don't think so if that's the case. If somebody hit him, did they not get medical care for him? If somebody that we don't even know, third party person, the plow driver, another car, Brian Higgins, whoever, did they not get medical care? So this kind of goes to the fact that he probably, possibly could have survived if he were to have treatment, if that pressure was released, if the fracture was mended, if the laceration was taken care of, if he wasn't lying there for hours, right? But it is interesting because how long was he there?
If Mr. O'Keefe had been brought to a trauma center or emergency room, what would the process be in your experience?
Well, he would have been intubated if he wasn't intubated in the field. One of the first things you need to do in a head injury is control the airway. Why? Two reasons. One, you want to have enough oxygen going to the brain to feed it. And two, you want to keep your carbon dioxide down because that causes increased intracranial pressure if it elevates. So you want to constrict the blood vessels a little.
Here's what I was just thinking, and that's why I had to interrupt. So if he was found close to 6 a.m., and it has to be like 1 to 3 hour time frame in order for that to happen to his eyes, then it could also be possible that he was killed at 2 in the morning, right? So it kind of goes both ways. Because their theory was he was killed at around 12:32. So, sure, that could work, but it could also mean he was killed at 2 in the morning. It's really up in the air. And that's what's interesting. But what about the hypothermia? Somebody asked, Kel asked, would the cold have affected the raccoon eyes? I don't think so, because I think he would have pointed that out. I don't think it really matters. But he is going to talk about the hypothermia because I think it's interesting. And I have a link for that. I don't know why I keep skipping though.
As I recall, his core temperature was
See?
80 when he was found.
Is that significant in the process and development of his injury from the moment he fell and hit his head until his ultimate passing?
Well, hypothermia, if you define hypothermia, it starts at 95 degrees. Your core temperature is usually about 98, 98.6. 95 is very mild hypothermia. When you get to 82 degrees, you're in severe hypothermia. What happens when you're hypothermic, and I'm a neurosurgeon, but I can tell you that you get into multiple organ failure. Your heart starts to have problems. It can have arrhythmias. You're not breathing. And ultimately, at hypothermia, you also become unconscious and go into a coma-like state. Below 80 degrees, you're probably going to die. So all I can tell you, it wasn't helpful.
So somebody asked, Perry, I think, is there a live feed at the same time every week? Not for me. For this, yes. For this trial, yes. I'm not live streaming a whole day, but somebody asked me to do that the other day, and I promised I was like, I am not going to live stream a whole day and sit here. But would it be fun? Sure. One of these days, maybe I can do one day. Because I have a baby, I don't think it's going to work for me. But I try to do it as much as I can. Marie said it's internal bleeding. So if it was on a surface, a bruise, the ice could slow the blood flow. Could. I mean, I was thinking it could preserve him longer. That sounds bad. And I know his poor family. Like, I thought about that too. I know someone mentioned it. I think it was Phoenix Rising. They said, oh my God, this must be absolutely soul destroying for his family to hear, knowing that if he was found, he could have been treated. And most injuries are like that, right? Like I said, with the pediatric ones, as a mom, as a parent, you know, if your baby falls, you're going to be looking for signs. If their pupils, if one's big and one's small, like one's dilated, bring them to the hospital because they might have pressure and all this other stuff. And usually it can be treated. But with the hypothermia, what the doctor was saying is that it didn't help. It was a compounding problem, but hypothermia can worsen your bodily functions. It can cause unconsciousness. But did it outright kill him? No, it just compounded the trauma from the head injury. So it really was the head injury, not the hypothermia, but it made things worse. But what about when he died? Dr. Wolf, does he have an opinion on that? He does. And I really wish this wasn't skipping and it's bothering me bad. So I'm going to just fast forward. Maybe it won't skip. I think it's right here.
Opinion. Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty whether Mr. O'Keefe died immediately or within 15 minutes?
No, I don't think he died immediately. Neither the hypothermia nor this kind of head injury would kill you immediately in any clinical experience I have.
So
Dr. Wolf, thank you.
he can't say when John O'Keefe died. I mean, that would be really hard without somebody seeing him or it being on a ring camera. But he said, I don't think he died immediately. The timeline of the bleeding, the bruising, the hypothermia, it does not align with instant death. And then, of course, there was cross-examination. He's going to describe his normal daily routine. And this made me laugh. It was kind of cute. I could tell what kind of personality he had. And I was wondering so many things about him. I was like Googling him and whatnot after this, but it was cute. So let's play that. I'm just going to fast forward.
Morning, doctor. I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sir, can you just describe, you started to do it a little bit on direct, a typical day for you?
I wake up at 4:15 in the morning. I go to my center. I set up patients with frames for their either radiosurgical procedures or stereotactic craniotomies. I go home. I make cappuccino for my wife at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I get back to work at 6:30 and move on. I have patients that
He makes cappuccino for his wife. He's super doctor. He's super husband. He's super person. He gets up at 4. Bless your soul. I too get up at 4, but it's to change diapers. I'm not a neurosurgeon. But he goes into everything he does for his day. I can't believe he goes back home and makes his wife cappuccino. I mean, that's the secret to a successful marriage, maybe. That's really sweet. But there was a reason why Alessi was asking him this.
I'm operating on, and I have patients that I'm seeing through the day.
And what type of patients and what type of work? Just in a typical day. What are you doing? What type of patients and what do you do?
It varies. I mean, I see patients with brain tumors. I see patients with hydrocephalus, which is water in their brain. I see pediatric brain tumors. I see subacute and chronic subdural hematomas.
Excuse me, come again? That's a good time for a comment. Chasing said, oh my gosh, why can't I put your thing on here? If Karen hit him at 12:32-ish, he would be lying on the lawn, likely alive for a few hours, and no one saw him. He never moved after being hit, even though he didn't pass immediately. That's one of the questions, and that's one of the things that bothers me because I've seen that lawn, not in person, but in videos. It's not that big. From the front door to where they say he was at the flagpole, not that far. You would think he would be easy to see. So I think this does kind of help reasonable doubt. But so Alessi was trying to get to a point here. This doctor's amazing. He sees cancer patients, children, but there's a point. What he's trying to get at is these people are alive. These people are not dead. And there's a reason why that's important, right? Because we're talking about a death in this situation. I hear my husband playing with a baby.
So, none of your typical days, none of the past typical months have involved forensic pathology, have they? You haven't acted as a forensic pathologist in...
I am, if you could have asked that question, very straightforward. I am not a forensic pathologist. I'm a brain surgeon.
See, his personality is like, you could have just asked me that, mister. Like, you did not have to go through all that. But he doesn't perform autopsies. But to be fair, he sees a lot more brains, right?
Right. And you don't perform autopsies, correct, sir? You're a brain surgeon.
Correct. In other words, I see more brains than the forensic pathologist.
Right. And is it correct to say that the brains that you see are of living people?
Correct.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is to go to a different part of the head.
And this is a fair point because this doctor was looking at medical examiner's photos, a medical examiner's report. Usually, other medical examiners would be looking at medical examiner's reports, or a forensic neurologist, or a forensic neuropathologist, somebody who's looking at it in relation to the law and medicine, trying to figure out if this is a homicide or an accident. So it is a fair question.
Then was discussed, but sticking with the decedent.
Excuse me, I didn't hear the last
I'm
word.
sorry, with the topic is going to be Mr. O'Keefe, the decedent in this
Okay.
matter, sir. You testified about raccoon eyes. The medical term for that, sir, is ecchymosis, right?
Correct.
And ecchymosis, raccoon eyes, does not cause a laceration to form on an eyelid, does it?
No.
Did you catch that? So he just admitted to a lessee that a separate laceration that was found on John O'Keefe's upper eyelid was not caused by a laceration to the back of his head. It was likely caused by direct impact, meaning something hit him.
Are you aware that Mr. O'Keefe had a laceration to the outside area of his right upper eyelid?
I am aware that the ME described that. Yes, sir.
Now,
So you have a
could
new
Your
bottle?
Honor, I'm going to, with Your Honor's permission, ask to publish what is already in evidence in a moment.
Okay.
Mr. Wolk,
What exhibit number, Mr. Alessi?
we're
He's
going
going to
to
show him the laceration that's on the eye.
165, Your Honor.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Wolf, have you seen this photo depiction before today?
I believe I have.
Is it correct that that injury on the upper right eyelid is caused by the application of force directly to that area of
Alessi, really? Can you just say, like, did he get hit in the front? I don't know. But
the front of the head, again, namely the upper eyelid?
That's possible, yes.
Is it more than possible? Is it probable that that injury was caused by the application of force directly to that area of the front of his head?
Well, an easy answer to that would be is that that's not part of the periorbital ecchymosis.
Thank you, sir. That was exactly going to be my next question. This injury is unrelated to any of what you've been describing, the fall backwards, the force transfer inside the skull, the, as you described it, the dura, the cerebral spinal fluid, all of that dynamic that you so ably described on your direct examination. This injury has nothing to do with that, correct?
Correct.
that's good for the defense, right? I thought it was. And so something came in contact with his head. I mean, Courtney and I have been talking about this. I say it to other friends of mine. We haven't established what happened if John O'Keefe was hit by a car. Where was he hit on his body, right? In order to fly backwards, where? And logically, if you think of the physics of it all, right, he had to be hit somewhere. And I would assume the lower extremities because that's the usual place. And the medical examiner who did his autopsy said she did not see signs of a vehicle hitting him. But let's say it was the front of his body. Let's say that's how he got the laceration on the right side of his eye. Let's just say for sake that he did. Okay, sake of argument. And then he flew backwards and then he hit his head on the ground. But then how did he get where he was? And then I was thinking, well, I'm not going to tell you everything I was thinking, but I'm like, if he was punched, that's the eye you like, let's say you punch someone. Have you ever gotten punched? I have. So let's say you punch someone. You don't usually punch them straight so that his left eye would be messed up. You would punch him across and then you would like it nicks him with this part of your fist, right? This part of your fist. And it's usually on your right eye. So it would be on his right eye. So does it to me as a juror that's sitting there? I'm like, well, I've been punched. Yeah. And then he got a laceration on his right eye because someone punched him. He had to be impacted on the face. To me, the likelihood that the car hit him there, he's he's what, six something, 6 feet tall at least. I don't know. If I was a juror, I just don't think I would believe that it was a car hitting his face. So I'm just trying to make that point. And that's how I follow things. I'm listening. I'm like, I'm not sure. Maybe if he was bending over to get the glass, the glass that fell, he's getting the cup. He dropped it. He bent over. Karen hit him. That's a theory that's going around. Hit him right in the face. But I don't know. Tell me what you think. Oh, actually, that was it for Dr. Wolf. I forgot that was the last question. So the very next person that we're going to be talking about is Miss Glass. That's on her name. That's on her name. But she's the one that's going to be opening the door for a lot of reasonable doubt. I'm sorry. Like I said, I am just going with what I see. This is going to raise a lot of questions. It is not good for the Commonwealth. Probably the biggest bombshell for a little while, I thought, because this glass situation is crazy. Because remember the glass on the bumper that we could hardly see, that we were confused about how it got there? How did it hold on through the tow truck? How did it hold on through the snow and the wind and the car driving? That's what we're getting to. You're going to get some answers. Christina Hanley, forensic scientist at the oh my God, every time I start to say Massachusetts, I can't say it. Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Try to say it. She testified about trace evidence. She's an expert in that. This includes the glass and the physical matches. She was doing matches, and you're going to see all of them. Stay with us because there's going to be photos and graphs and things, and I'm very visual. But she, of course, explained the lab is accredited. They undergo people coming in and looking and making sure they're doing the right thing multiple times a year. She does analysis on hairs, fibers, glass. And she also, of course, described her role as a forensic scientist 3. We've seen a 1, we've seen a 2, and now we're going to see a 3. Let me think of what else she said. She's doing the comparison of the glass evidence in this case, including microscopic examinations. She's doing instrumental tests, which I can't even understand. There's all kinds of like polarized light microscopes and infrared lights and stuff like that. Don't take my word for it. We will hear her talking about it. But somebody said that Dr. Wolf is scary looking. To me, he did remind me of like American Psycho a little bit, like an older version. Anyway, she specifically analyzed items and they're going to have names. And I hate these kind of like scientific labels. But for example, 3-2 was the clear glass cup. Remember that? It was found on the road. Then there was item 3-3. Those were 5 pieces of clear glass from the bumper of Karen Reed's vehicle. And then there was 7-12. Those were pieces of glass and plastic that were recovered from the ground or various areas at 34 Fairview. And then there was item 7-14. That was one piece of glass that was found at 34 Fairview outside as well. And that was previously measured by another analyst. The range of these pieces, it was small. I think the largest one was like 7/8 of an inch. Yeah. Or no, I think that was the largest one. The largest one. But let's listen to her because she could probably explain it way better than I can. I'm doing my best over here. Oh, wait, that's Dr. Wolf still. Yeah. Am I going to get this right? I thought I put it on my screen. Oh, here it is.
So this right here is item 3-2, and these pieces up here are several pieces from 7-12.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down.
So she's going over what pieces I just talked about. I just wanted to give you a visual. Hope it's not confusing.
Now, the other two items that you analyzed or examined in this part of your physical match analysis were items 3-3 and 7-14, correct?
That's correct.
And turning your attention specifically to item 3-3, if you could just remind the jury as far as the physical description of that item that was provided to you.
Sure. So item 3-3 was 5 pieces of clear glass with broken irregular edges that were recovered from the bumper of the vehicle.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right, so I think that's a little confusing, and we're going to get to a better way of understanding this because they're all labeled crazily. And I'm sure you understand that they have to for scientific reasons. But we're going to get labels.
Jury, could you
And we
delineate,
did that.
in addition to the physical match analysis that you did between item 3-2, the cup, and 6 of the pieces that you found to be a physical match from item 7-12, did you also compare pieces from item 3-2, 7-12, and 7-14?
Yes, I did.
And what did you conclude in your physical match analysis of those items together?
Don't worry, I'll explain it.
So upon examining and comparing item 3-2, 7-12, and 7-14, I had concluded that 6 of the 9 pieces of glass from 7-12 physically fit with item 3-2, and the remaining 3 of the 9 from 7-12 did not have a physical fit to item 3-2. I also compared item 3-2 and 7-12 to 7-14, but there was no physical match to item 7-14.
I was like, wait a minute. I listened to this like 4 or 5 times. I was like, why does the Commonwealth want to highlight this at all? To me, this was so damning. It starts out making sense. You're like, okay, there's a connection. There's pieces of glass here and pieces of glass there. But then she just told you that she compared the glass and it wasn't matching up. And I don't know if you missed that, but 6 out of the 9 shards from 7-12, we'll get to it. Those are the ones that were found, 34 Fairview, were a physical match with the drinking glass. So you're like, there it is. The glass, it matches it. Hold your horses. Like my dad used to say when I was like 5, hold your horses, okay? It's probably my grandmother. That's not what's going on here. Just keep listening because the 3 shards from 7-12, the pieces on the road, did not match the cup. And worse yet, no match was found between the glass cup and the item 7-14. That was also found at 34 Fairview. I'm going to explain it. It's going to be explained, I promise. It's just, was the jury getting confused from this? Because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I would understand any of this. I would be falling asleep.
Yes, I did.
And what did you conclude based on that physical match analysis between those items?
So upon examining and comparing those items, so there were
I felt so bad for her. Somebody in the comments says, wow, she looks really young. Phoenix Rising. Wow, she looks very young. Like she ended up there when she went out to get milk for her mom and got lost. She's smart, but when you're put on the spot, it's hard.
5 total pieces of glass from item 3-3. I used 2 of those pieces for physical match comparison.
She took 2 pieces labeled A and B from the bumper, item 3-3, and she compared those, and there was no physical match between the bumper pieces found and the one on the road, or the piece that came from 34 Fairview that was in one piece. Hello? Like, the glass on the bumper isn't from 34 Fairview, guys. That's what's going on here. That's leading up. It's leading up.
To the items recovered from the road. Upon my examination, I did not, there was no physical match between those 2 pieces from item 3-3 to any of the pieces recovered from the road. So that included items 3-2, 7-12, and 7-14.
But what about the debris? Remember the debris on John's clothing? And for me, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand how things work that you could actually get pieces of debris from a tail light that I don't even believe can shatter the way that we're seeing. So it's getting worse because as a juror, I'm like, wait, I've crashed into things. And yeah, that's not how it happened. But remember the debris on his clothing? She also analyzed that. Yeah, she analyzed that. She compared the plastic debris to the SUV's taillight, and it had red and clear broken plastic. And we're going to get into that in just one second. What do you think she's going to find? Well,
Ms. Hanley, is the clear plastic that you used from item 3-1 was from the housing unit itself, the large piece, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down.
thanks. Did we just totally miss what she said? I hope not. Orange Rose said, I love orange. I've watched a lot of coverage on this trial from several creator sources, and it's by far the best. You break it down so perfectly. I'm trying, but just remember, I'm also having to think on my feet, like in the moment, so I'm not the best all the time. I make mistakes.
Now, the other item that you were comparing this to was item 7-18.18. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what was provided to you as the description of that item, 7-18.18?
So 7-18.18 was debris that was collected from 2 pieces of clothing from the victim.
And specifically, that would be 7-17, an orange T-shirt. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct, yeah.
Okay, as well as 7-18, a gray long sleeve shirt. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you say that item 7-18.18 contained debris, what did that debris consist of?
Kel wanted to know if this was for the prosecution of the defense. This is a state's witness.
So the debris consisted of one clear piece of plastic, as well as several pieces of red plastic, among some other trace material.
Now, were there measurements taken of those items within the debris, specifically the clear plastic and the red plastic?
Yes.
And what were those measured to be?
I would just need to refer to my report for that.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
She needs to refer to her report, but they were small. But yeah, that's why I was saying, why did the Commonwealth want to know this? Because it's not actually good. What she's going to conclude is that, yes, these little tiny pieces of debris that are like the size of a piece of rice, she's going to say, could have originated from the taillight or a similar source. So, I mean, this looks good for the Commonwealth if you don't take into account or consideration the random pieces of glass that are found on Karen's bumper. So, what stops it from being placed in these places? And we're going to get to it. But to me personally, what went in my head was someone like just taking, like, oh, we've got some extra little debris. Let me just throw it in this bag that John's clothes are in. That's where my mind went. So if my mind is going there, there is at least one juror that's got to be thinking the same thing. Like, well, if random pieces of glass are on Karen's bumper that don't belong there and don't even match anything, where'd it come from? Where'd it come from? But you'll see why. The smallest piece was, she said, well, she's going to tell you.
Okay, so the clear piece of plastic in 7-18.18, it measured approximately 1/8 of an inch by 1/16 of an inch. And then I measured the largest and the smallest of the red plastic pieces. And the largest piece of red plastic measured approximately 1/16 of an inch by less than 1/16 of an inch. And the smallest piece among those measured approximately less than 1/16 of an inch by less than 1/16 of an inch.
And so those particular pieces that you measured, about how small are we talking about?
So the largest for the red plastic, the largest piece measured, just for visual purposes, it's roughly like the size of a grain of rice.
The size of a grain of rice. I don't know why it shocks me, but like my jaw was on the floor. I was like, and hello, Jennifer. Is that how I'm saying it right? Good evening, new follower here. Found you through Courtroom Confidential. Oh, thanks for being here. They also said sprinkling little Proctor fairy dust. You know what? I can laugh. I can laugh at that. That's funny. I like when there's little jokes. I know this is a murder trial. I get it. I feel like we always have to have a little bit of humor in all of this, right? Or we'll go crazy. But this is going to go right into cross-examination. It is, because this is confusing as heck, right? But could it have come from the tail light? Yes. I mean, it looks like tail light plastic, right? There's a possibility. Could be good for either side. But here's the thing. Jackson, as I'm sure you already know, great attorney. All these people are great attorneys. They have varying degrees of greatness for things that they do. But he is going to make it so easy for the jury to understand, which is so important. It's so important. Oh, and I forgot to tell you something. Totally forgot this and just remembered. She was also asked, and I can just scrub back. Let me scrub back. She was asked, let's go back to, where were we? 9. Sorry about that. Let's just go back a little bit.
What is that? What does that consist of?
So the instrumental analysis that I conducted.
I don't know if I lost it. I probably lost it. Darn it. I was going to show you that she said there was no blood or tissue on there. There was no blood or tissue, so. Yeah. Smallest of that, yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm just seeing if it's in here. Nope. No, I think that was actually, you know what? Now that I think of it, it might have been on cross. Yeah, it's on cross. My bad. Sorry about that. It was on cross.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hanley.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you again. We met
She's
about
like,
a year
"Oh,
ago. First things first, you were just talking about some plastic pieces in 7-18.8, correct?
It was 7-18.18.
0.18. I left a 1 out. 7-18.18. We're dealing with a lot of numbers. I'm going to see if we can cut through that here in a second. Sure. First of all, you indicated that you were doing a comparative analysis in different, sort of different categorical ways, using microscopy, using the microspec, using the FTIR. I think you also use the FTIR in that as well?
Yes.
And you indicated that your analysis concluded with those pieces could have come from the same source, from the source that in 3-1, the taillight. But you're not conclusively saying they did, correct?
It could have come from, they could have a common origin, or it could have come from another source with the same characteristics.
Right. So in other words, another way to say that, Ms. Hanley, is it may have come from the taillight, may not have.
It's a possibility.
Okay. I also want to ask you real quick about
I hate when they don't go near the podium.
the taillight manufacturer. You were shown an exhibit. I think it's Exhibit 200.
No, we don't want the taillight manufacturer. I want to go into the tissue, the blood tissue.
On any of the glass, I want to shift gears to just the glass material that you analyzed and that you looked at and you inspected. You saw no blood, no skin, no biological material, no tissue, human tissue or otherwise, on any of those pieces that you inspected, did you?
Upon examination of those items, making observations of those types of material, that's not my area of expertise. I don't think I noted anything that was maybe consistent with that.
So in other words, even though you're not in the bio material expert section of the lab, you certainly would have noted if there was skin or biological material or obvious blood on glass pieces. You were looking at them in many cases through a stereo microscope, correct?
Yes, I would have made note of observations of anything that I would have noted on the surface.
So to make this simple, there was no blood or anything visible on the glass. She's looking at it under a microscope. She would have been able to see tissue. It's not her expertise. The glass on Karen's bumper found at 34 Fairview. There was no bloody tissue on there. And then Jackson asked to please, he's like, can we please simplify these categories? Because somebody made this mention. They're probably trying to confuse the jury. That is a tactic. Don't say they're probably trying to. They are trying to confuse them, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's a tactic. Make it so confusing that they're like, right, yeah, you're the smart one. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm believing you. It really, the glass, the thing. But Jackson knew this had to be understood by the jury because he wants them to understand what these pieces are. And I wanted to understand. I'm visual. I'm like, please, yes, give me a better understanding, please. And he does. And I thought it was pretty brilliant.
I want to talk about the comparisons that you did. And you'll forgive me, I'm a visual learner. So I'd like to talk about it in 4 categories.
Okay.
Linear categories. Category 1, item 3-2. Category 2, item 3-3. Category 3, item 7-12. Category 4, item 7-14. 3, 2, 3, 3, 7, 12, 7, 14. Can we talk about it in those particulars?
Sure.
Okay. 3, 2 was the cup, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm going to use the word cup rather than glass for obvious reasons.
So 3-2 is the cup. He's not going to say glass, even though it's made of glass because all of this is glass. So he's like, for obvious reasons, I'm calling it the cup. So we've got the cup. I'm sure you've seen it. It was in my thumbnail. It's a broken cup.
You can get confused by that. So when I say the cup, do you know what I'm talking about?
Item 3-2.
Great. 3-3 are the 5 items that were found on the bumper.
3-3 are the 5 pieces of glass found on Karen Reed's bumper.
Claimed to have been found on the bumper by MSP or crime. Okay?
Yes.
5 items, A, B, C, D, and E.
Those are the items. They're claimed to have been found on her bumper.
Correct?
Correct.
Item 7-12 are 9 items, glass items, that were recovered at 34 Fairview by Trooper Proctor.
This is interesting. Okay, so 7-12, I think he said, are the 9 pieces of glass from the road or various areas at 34 Fairview and were picked up or retrieved or submitted, put into evidence by Sergeant Buchanan. Remember Buchanan? Yeah.
In an evidence envelope, correct?
So
There was an objection. He had to phrase it a different way because he had to have her look at the envelope. But spoiler alert, she looks at the envelopes. He's the one that submitted it.
Sustained as to who they were recovered from.
Sure. Did you receive the items along with an evidence envelope?
I
I'm going to go to where she does explain it.
We already looked at what's been marked for identification as triple G. I was asking you about what has now been marked as triple H. If you'll just look at that, what I'm most interested in is, do you see a name, a trooper's name, in the middle of that evidence bag?
What name?
yes, I do.
Is that Buchanan?
It looks like it says that, yeah.
Okay. And just so we're clear, that bag is associated with 7-12 of your analysis. The item 7-12, correct?
Yes, again, I didn't take this photo, but I have, yeah.
He's like, don't worry about the photo.
Yeah.
Is it Buchanan?
Yes, yeah.
That's all I need. Taking a look at what's been marked as triple I for identification. Do you see a name associated with that evidence bag?
There's another evidence bag being shown to her, and this one is 7-14. This was the single piece of glass that was found from 34 Fairview, and we're going to hear who it was found by.
What
Yes.
name is that?
It's actually a little hard to read. It looks like it could say Trooper Proctor.
Okay. And that is associated with 7-14.
This is big. This is big. It's very interesting. And there's going to be more after this next part, because he wants to make sure we are very clear on those labels. He wants to make it so easy to understand, so there's no mistakes being made.
Our fourth category, correct?
It is labeled as, excuse me, 7-14.
Thank you.
Let me fast forward to when he shows it to her.
So the four categories, just so we're clear and we can stop using so many numbers because they can get confusing. 3-2
No.
is the cup, right?
Yes.
The answer, Chasing, is no. They said, just curious, I've done a ton of crime stuff, research, etc., not as many as you, but have you ever seen a case handled like this? No, which is why I wanted to talk about it, which is why I wanted to analyze it, especially with friends.
3-3 is the bumper glass, correct?
That is correct.
7-12 is the Buchanan glass, correct?
Wait, I want you to hear this again. He's going to label them a certain way.
So the four categories,
He's talking so low.
just so we're clear and we can stop using so many numbers because they can get confusing. 3-2 is the cup, right?
3-2 is the cup. We got it.
Yes.
3-3 is the bumper glass,
3-3, bumper glass. Got it.
correct?
That is correct.
7-12 is the Buchanan
7-12, he can't say Buchanan. He mispronounced it, but 7-12, Buchanan glass.
glass, correct? You just looked at it,
Yes.
okay? 7-14 is the Proctor glass.
7-14 is the Proctor glass. How smart was Jackson right here? You have to give him credit no matter what. The cup, the bumper glass, the Buchanan glass, and the Proctor glass. Easy and smart for the jury, honestly. And why does she have such an issue with that? She's like, well, she's a state's witness, but she's like, okay. And then there was
Single piece,
the graph, the demonstrative.
correct?
And I'm so busy. I mean, busy. See that? I'm so busy. I'm so confused all the time. And I'm visual. This just blew it out of the water for me. Sorry, I got excited and kept pressing the button before it was time. Here we go.
Ms. Hanley, you see the chalk that's been, or actually what's been marked as Exhibit 205 in evidence on the screen?
Yes.
Is that consistent with what you and I were just talking about at the witness stand?
Yes.
If you'll direct your attention,
I love this. Okay, before he goes into it, let's look at it. If you're watching, some people are doing the dishes, some people are doing their laundry, some people like to take a nap. 3-2, we see the cup. 3-3, we see the bumper glass. You can't really see the pictures, but you can kind of see them. 7-12, 9 pieces recovered by Buchanan. 7-14, glass recovered by Proctor. So now we've got our bearings straight.
to the screen on the right, just because it's a little easier, and I think the laser pointer
This is
shows up a little
so
better.
crazy.
Do you see the 4 categories represented in this exhibit?
Yes.
This is exactly why he wanted to name it this way. And if there are visual people in the jury, which I'm sure there are, we see the names Buchanan and Proctor. They're right there, front and center.
Okay, so 3-2, I'm going to go over it very quickly one more time, just visually. 3-2 on the left is the cup, correct?
Yes.
3-3 represents the 5 pieces of glass of what we call the bumper glass, A, B, C, D, and E, correct?
Yes.
7-12 is the 9 pieces of glass recovered by Trooper Buchanan at 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes.
And finally, 7-14 is the glass, single piece of glass recovered by Trooper Proctor, correct?
Yes.
Taking these one by one, just so.
Oh, I like this comment. Courtney said, chasing, I kept try to remember where I'd seen you before, and I just realized it was from the Summer Wells case. I remember I was always watching about Summer Wells. I haven't watched it in so long. I'm glad you guys know each other from somewhere.
Everybody see? Taking these one by one, looking at starting with the bumper glass, category 2.
Should I turn the volume up a little bit? Hold on.
Piece A did not match the cup, anything in 7-12 or anything in 7-14, correct?
That's correct.
He's not at the podium. Piece A from the bumper did not match the cup, the pieces from Fairview from Buchanan, or the piece found by Proctor.
Piece B did not match the cup, did not match anything in 7-12, did not match anything in 7-14, correct?
That's correct.
Piece B didn't match the cup, the glass from Buchanan, or Proctor.
And moving over to category 3, there were some matches in these 9 items, 6 of them, A, B, C, D, F, and K, correct?
Yes.
But what those matched, Ms. Hanley, with a cup, nothing on the bumper.
Did you understand this part? He's showing the pieces that were found by Buchanan at 34 Fairview, supposedly. Some of them matched the cup, but they didn't match anything on the bumper. What? But there were also pieces that did not match the cup there, but were supposedly found at 34 Fairview. Weird. But what was crazy was there was one piece of glass on Karen's bumper that matched a piece of glass that was also found where?
Correct?
Correct.
And what didn't match the cup were E, I, and L. Is that right?
That's correct.
Moving back to category 2, however, there was one thing, item E, that did match something in this series of categories. Isn't that right?
Not a physical match, but instrumentally there was consistency.
All right. And this was an item, the only piece of bumper glass, the only piece of bumper glass to match anything else in your analysis. Matched what? What was consistent with what?
Item 3-3, piece E, was consistent in physical and instrumental properties with the sample that I took from item 7-14.
I was like, spit it out. Spit it out. What she's trying to say, but she doesn't want to say the Proctor glass. A piece from the glass that was recovered at 34 Fairview from former Trooper Proctor was found on Karen's bumper. But it doesn't match the cup, and it doesn't match any of the pieces that were recovered by Buchanan. So where in the world did this glass come from? If the jurors are not like, I would be surprised. I would be surprised. Like, I was like, feed the baby, I was like, what? If I was a juror, I'd be like, I'm sorry, way too much reasonable doubt. I don't understand what's going on here. None of it matched the cup, the infamous cup, Karen's glass from the bar. What? Isn't that the whole theory that the glass from the cup and the cup it came out and oh my gosh, my mind was blown. I was like, I'm done for the night. But we do have a redirect. We do have a redirect. We have Lally coming back. Now, Lally, he doesn't challenge what Jackson just showed. Why? Because he would dig himself in a deeper hole. I think he wanted to be like, oh, let's forget about that. I don't want to say anything again. Let's just move on. Instead, he pointed out that the defense's visual omitted one key set of evidence. It didn't talk about the plastic debris from John O'Keefe's clothing. You know, the taillight matches. So Harry's like, the glass was proctored.
Now, Ms. Hanley, as far as you were asked some questions on cross-examination about biological pieces or tissue or things being on the glass, and you referenced that that was done in another unit, correct?
Yes, if that type of
She's going to stutter, not stutter. I feel bad saying stutter. She's not stuttering, but she's taking a lot of time figuring this out. But he had to bring this up because remember the biological tissue. So he's like, you're not even in that part of the lab.
examination was needed, that would be done in a different unit.
Objection, Your Honor.
And she allowed it. It's fine.
The chalk that you were just presented, as far as the 4 photographs that were depicted in there, have you ever seen any of those 4 photographs before?
No.
Do you know specifically who or where any of the items 3-2, 3-2, 3-3, 7-12, or 7-4 were physically recovered from?
I just have the description that's put in the limb system when it's submitted to the lab.
I was like, why is he trying to challenge that? Now that would mean that Proctor and Buchanan were not truthful about where they were found if we're going to challenge where they were found. So I thought that was kind of a weak redirect. And then we have this part, which I'd mentioned. This was not discussing the debris. And then I'll answer some of your questions because I think that's all I have after this.
Now, as far as the chalk that you were presented with on cross-examination, was there anything in there about item 7-18.18 or item 3-1, either the taillight housing or the debris from Mr. O'Keefe's clothing?
No, there was not.
Nothing further.
Anything?
Very briefly. So in sum, not a single piece of glass on that bumper can be connected to that cup, correct?
There was no physical match to the pieces that I compared for physical match from the bumper. There was no physical match to the glass cup 3-2.
Wow. I was just like, whoa, that's crazy. Oh my goodness. Oh, Odomaris's comment is still on because I forgot to take it off. Well, wow. I think this is one of the most interesting days of trial for me anyway, because I like the medical stuff. I definitely like learning about that. I was kind of blown away by the cup glass stuff. I don't think we ever really got to that in the last trial that I can remember. Or if we did, it was probably so confusing that I glossed over it because I didn't even understand what was happening, which happens, right? So I did also want to acknowledge what Courtney said, that John's mom looks defeated, and I would believe she is probably defeated. I would be very upset if my son's death was not investigated by death investigators, first and foremost, that there was nobody out there in the way beginning taking photographs, that it was a very botched investigation. I would be very angry at that. But then I would also have to trust the same authorities, the state, I would have to trust the same authorities to figure out who did it and then charge the right person and get justice. And that's really tough when you already know they made mistakes. We may never know what happened, but I feel like it really sucks because where's the closure? Where's the justice? How do we really figure this out? Because now it's too late. You can't go in the house and examine for anything that could have happened there. You didn't collect any ring camera footage. There were cameras around that were not collected. Could we have seen something? What if it was something else? What if we saw John O'Keefe being dragged by a vehicle or a plow, or we saw Karen running out of her car, or we saw Karen's car go by? There had to be something on that one officer's ring camera. There had to be. I don't believe it. And you know why I don't believe it? Because you have to show it to me. And if you can't produce it, why not? Like in a real investigation, you would collect that. That's the first thing. I do a lot of cases. That's the first thing that they ask when they go door to door. Do you have any ring camera footage? Do you have footage? Do you have a camera around here? That's what they're looking for. So to think that it just wasn't collected because who was that? Oh my gosh, who was the guy who didn't collect it? He was a different sergeant, but he said, "Oh no, I know the angle of that camera. It wouldn't have shown anything." So what? I'm not going to take your word for it, sir. So all of these things just add up to me feeling really, really sad for his family because the investigation wasn't done and he's a cop. So you would think it would be the utmost care, the most diligent investigation, and that is why it seems sketchy because you have other cops involved. So if this would have been a civilian, like if there were no cops involved and anything happened, I think it would have been investigated properly, but it wasn't. And that is why there's so many theories about corruption and things happening. And rightfully so, because you're seeing it happen with Trooper Proctor, right? So my goodness, this was a long day. It was a crazy day. There was a lot to it. And I feel like this was a good day for the defense and a bad day for the Commonwealth. You can tell me what you think about it. Also, just to let everyone know, I'm doing a video on this channel, this one right here, Kimbyrleigha Live. It's not going to be a live stream, but I'm doing a Brian Koberger video on Monday and it's going to release. I put a lot of work into it. I hope you like it. It's something a little bit different. Just a theory, just some information about the leak and stuff, but different. And also, I'm going to be going live right now with my members from my other channel just for about 35 minutes, 40 minutes, talking about my experience on investigation discovery. So if you want to see that, it's something for my members on the other channel, but I'm going to answer questions, going to tell you about my experience, good and bad, because I cried. I cried. I think it's a little corny, but I cried. It was rough. It was a rough day for me. I'm not used to what I was put through, but I'm also very grateful for those opportunities, and I wouldn't have them if it wasn't for all of you. So I do appreciate it. I never want to feel like I'm not grateful, but I'm not used to marathon days of filming and being asked a lot of questions and being put on the spot. But oh, Gallagher, that's who it was. Thank you, Brandy. Gallagher just knew that the other cop's camera footage wouldn't show anything, so he didn't even ask to look. Not okay. Yeah, and I can't believe something that I can't see. I can't believe something that I can't see. I mean, obviously I get it. Like there's some things I can believe. Can't see the wind, I'll know it's blowing, whatever, but there will be signs, right? And in a criminal case, you better bring the receipts, you better bring the evidence, and if you're hiding it for some reason, that seems odd. But I'm really, really happy about these lives. I'm super excited. And Courtney said, "Girl, need a break." Do you know they didn't let me go to the bathroom? Do you know that I couldn't get up? I cried. I cried. Oh my gosh, you'll hear about it in my live stream. I'm gonna go live right now. I'm just gonna do a quick and don't forget to catch my episode. It's on Playboy Murders. It is, I think, the finale. So it just launched on May 5th, and my episode is the finale of the season. And I really wish we could watch it together, but I think I'll get in trouble for streaming it. So probably can't. But thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. It means so much to me that we're here and we can just talk civilly and we can go back and forth on our thoughts. And it just means a lot to me. So I want you to know that. I'm not just saying it, I really, really mean it. And yeah, we've got Tuesday coming soon. I hope you all are here for that. I don't think I'll be able to ever get to a point where I can do it the same day because mom life. My husband's watching baby right now. But you'll also be able to see the baby in my other live stream because she makes little cameos in there. But I will see you very soon. And yeah, thank you so much. I know I accidentally cut myself off, so let me say my goodbye and then I'll push the button. So bye. I will see you in my very next video.